What's up guys, this is Chris here, and today we are out on this beautiful freezing rain filled day to give you another top 5. Today we're going to be going over the 5 guns that changed my life. And in this video we're going to be talking about 5 different guns that enhanced my life or set me on a new path. We're going to be going over a little bit of my background, some of the guns that I started shooting with, hunting with, shooting competition with, etc. So today we're going to be going over 5 guns that mean an awful lot to me, and hopefully it will make you want to get out there and go shooting and have fun and pick up some new guns yourself. Before we get into the video, I do want to mention my Patreon supporters. Thank you guys very much. It's because of you guys that we have cool guns to make videos with and ammunition, and we really appreciate all your support. So if you want to support us, it's the best way to do it. The link is in the description of this video and every video. Along with that link in the description, there's another link to YSS. It's a youth homeless shelter in Ames, Iowa, and I'd really appreciate it if you will go down and click that link and donate to those kids. And then finally, I do want to mention my ex, Honest Outlaw 86. If you want to see new and interesting content that isn't on YouTube and maybe a little too spicy for YouTube, you can always go over to X and subscribe. I'd appreciate it. All right, let's start out with number 5 here, and they're in no particular order, to be honest with you. They're just what I'm gonna pick up first, and we're gonna go over the Glock 26. The Fat Baby. Now the Glock 26 is a gun that means a lot to me because it is the gun that I started carrying every day. Now the reason why I did that is because over a decade ago this was one of, if not the best option for concealed carry. It was the tiniest Glock at the time. There were no single stacks available. There were no SIG P365s or Micro 9s or anything like that. This was the lightest, smallest 9mm that you could depend on, and boy can you. I shot this day and night until I felt absolutely comfortable I could hit what I was aiming at with this tiny little gun. And honestly, if you train enough with these tiny guns, you're not missing a whole lot of shootability. You can shoot out to 100 yards with these if you need to. They have 10+1, and they take the larger capacity magazines as well. So I would carry this with a 10 round mag with a finger groove on it, so it gave me a little bit extra grip on the grip itself. And then I would carry a Glock 19 magazine, a 15 round magazine, as a backup. This is a Gen 5 Glock 26 that's just stock, but my original Glock, which I sadly sold and which I didn't, was actually an OD green Glock 26, and I believe it had an HD front on it with a blacked out rear sight, and then I think it had a trigger job and a little bit of stippling as well, because that was all the rage back then. The Glock 26 served me extremely well. I shot thousands of rounds through it, and it gave me no problems whatsoever, and I would still consider it to be certainly a viable concealed carry gun today. The only thing that really beats it is the smaller, lighter, thinner Micro 9s that offer you the same capacity, but honestly this is just reliable and arguably more shootable. So if you're carrying a Glock 26 today, you're certainly very well armed. Now the Glock 26 is a striker fired polymer frame pistol with the legendary reliability and track record of the 19 and the 17. They made it smaller, but they didn't skimp on reliability or accuracy, and the gun shoots exceptionally well for the size that it is. Overall, still one of the best guns in the world, and definitely changed my life as far as concealed carry. I went from trying to carry a commander size 1911 every day and feeling a little uncomfortable here and there to carrying a Glock 26 and being very happy and feeling very confident I could still defend myself. Speaking of 1911s, might as well get to it right now. We're going to be talking about the 1911, specifically the Colt 1911. Now this is a Colt 1911 Gold Cup, and this is not the gun that I learned to shoot with, although I would have been pretty spoiled if I did. I had just a standard old rack grade Colt 1911, I think it was like a Series 70. It was a very old gun, it was completely shot out, but it made it nice and slick, and it made the trigger actually pretty good. If you don't have a trigger job, all you have to do is shoot a gun for 30 years and the trigger gets lightened up. What a surprise. Now that was a 45 ACP, and it was a 7 round capacity with just the standard old smooth wood grips, but it was a beautiful gun, and I wish I still had it. My love affair with the 1911 has arguably gotten completely out of control. I have over 40 of them now because you got to catch them all, just like fucking Pokemon. 1911s have upgraded a lot since the old days when I used to shoot them. Now they have double stacks, and they have 9mm, and they have red dot mounts, and they have all kinds of fun, cool stuff that make them even more shootable, but some things haven't changed. And even on this Colt Gold Cup, this is a single stack with target sights on it. The trigger is still really good, and honestly the trigger was really good on my previous version as well, just because of how shot out it was. And even shitty rack grade Rock Island 1911s usually have pretty good triggers, and an old Colt is hard to beat. The Colt 1911 was used as the United States military sidearm for over 80 years. It wasn't phased out until the 80s with the Beretta, but after that, it was still seen in service in special operations to this day. So if you have an old Colt 1911 and 45 ACP and it carries 7 rounds and you have a YouTube guy telling you it's not going to work, all you have to do is go out and train a little bit, and trust me, the old bitch will get the job done. Even still to this day, as you guys see with my reviews, I have quite a soft spot for the 1911, not just because it was the first handgun I ever really shot consistently, not because it was my dad's gun, but because it's America's handgun, and it sure is beautiful as well. Although I would admit, I wouldn't have minded this when I was 12 years old. I can tell you I probably would have hit G.I. Joes and pop cans a little bit better. What did I actually shoot those G.I. Joes with a little bit more is going to be this guy right here. Now this is the Henry Golden Boy 22 lever action, and this was the first rifle my dad ever bought me. Now my dad wasn't big on gift giving, so I knew there were strings attached to it, but I actually really enjoyed the strings. This came with one caveat. I had to do a job. He would buy me the ammunition, he would get me the gun, but I had to make sure to keep rabbits and all kinds of other critters out of the garden, since I grew up in the country after all, and you got to take care of yourself when you grew up in rural Iowa. I learned to shoot with buckhorn sights very, very well. As a matter of fact, this was the gun we shot the most because 22 long rifle, I could literally go into coast to coast and buy when I was 10 years old. And I'm not sure if you should be able to do that, but we were. And on top of that, we could save up money doing trees on the weekends and mowing lawns, and I could buy huge buckets of 22, and we can take my friends shooting every weekend. And we just got so many rounds through this gun and so much trigger time through this gun that I felt like I could literally hit anything. On top of that, I shot many, many moving targets with this as well, because if you shoot a rabbit and it doesn't go down the first time, that mother takes off, and you have to start racking it like the rifleman to actually get the job done. Man, the buckhorn sights are not what I would consider absolutely ideal for target shooting, but they can certainly work, and man, did I get used to them. So it's hard for me to hear complaints about these today, or even this platform, the lever action. People that grew up with AR-15s say how obsolete these are, but the reality is that if you are a skilled marksman, you can make anything with a trigger and a bullet work, especially if you have enough practice. Now, this gun also is really beautiful, and I think it's an absolutely great gun to start shooting with, partly because you don't have that semi-automatic capability, and every time you pull the trigger, you have to rack the gun and pull the trigger again, which makes you really think about that gun going off and makes you really consider whether or not you have that sight lined up, you have that good sight picture, you're working on your breathing, your trigger control is perfect, because once this guy runs out, it's kind of a pain to load as well. You have to pull this rod out and load them all one by one instead of just sticking a new magazine in. So a little bit longer road around, but you still get to the same place, and that place tastes a lot like rabbit. Now, the first shotgun my dad ever got me was this guy right here. This is a Harrington and Richardson, or H&R 20 gauge single shot. And I've talked about this a couple times, but not in too many videos. But this guy right here is probably the most versatile and probably the most useful $100 gun a human being can own. This thing can be had for less than $100 if you look in the right places, and it has lighter recoil than a standard 12 gauge, so it's pretty good for a 12-year-old to learn on, like me. I wasn't this big when I was 12, so I needed all the help I can get. My dad's shotgun was a single shot 12 gauge that when he was a kid in the 1950s, him and his dad actually found in a junkyard. Maybe I'll show you that someday. But he actually shot a single shot 12 gauge, so he got me a single shot 20 gauge. My dad was real big on taking your time and make sure you hit what you're aiming at and not just spraying and praying, because ammunition's expensive and all, and my dad grew up in a repurposed boxcar, so money actually meant a lot to him. So we picked this guy up. I think this was used when we got it, and I've shot maybe, I don't know, 500 to 1,000 shot shells through this over my lifetime, and it's killed quite a few deer, quite a few pheasants, a lot of rabbits. This guy right here, all you do is push the release, pop the barrel open right there, it locks. You can see how smooth it is. That's what happens when you use a gun a lot. Pop it down, load one shell in, rack it shut, rack the hammer back, shoulder the gun, and it's got a really nice and smooth single action trigger pull, again because of all of those rounds. And there's this really obsolete bead sight up here, which nobody on YouTube seems to be able to use, that when I was about 14 I could hit 2-liter bottles with at 50 yards. So trust me, all you got to do is center the bead sight down the barrel, use the length of the barrel as your rear sight, get a solid sight picture by putting your face on the cheek piece, pull that trigger nice and slow, and that bottle, rabbit, deer, whatever you're shooting at is not going to be very happy. Now, even deer slugs through this are very, very accurate, but my favorite thing to shoot through this is obviously 6-shot, 5-shot birdshot. It does pretty well for winged critters as well, although it's probably one of the world's best rabbit hunting guns if you don't mind spitting out BBs. Trigger's good. The recoil on this is very minimal for a shotgun because it is a 20 gauge. And a long time ago, I took a drill and I took a limb saver butt pad off my dad's 12 gauge, which doesn't even fit on this. You can see that. And I just wham bam this bad boy in there, and all of a sudden, automatic recoil reduction. I carried extra shells on the shotgun with this little cheap ass, what is this, made in Vietnam shot shell holder here, which has been on there for about 20 years, and it worked really well. As you can see here that I don't take very good care of this. I should, but I don't. And the coating is held up to several Iowa winters out hunting. And if you hunt in Iowa in December, you will notice that it turns from rain to sleet to freezing snow to all kinds of crazy weather, and your gun needs to have a pretty good coating. And honestly, manuals have a tendency to work better in brutal weather, so a single shot or a pump is going to work even when it's 30 below. So I do like this gun. I like the reliability of it. Obviously, it could be more accurate, it could be quicker, but certainly for the under $100 standpoint or for your average 12-year-old, it is a hell of a gun. Now, for my final gun that I want to talk about here, I want to talk about the gun that sort of got me into the style of shooting that you guys probably know me for, and that is speed shooting with handguns. And that is going to be my original CZ SP01 Shadow. Now, this bad boy has had so many rounds through it. You can see all the wear marks on it. You can see that I've JB welded the rear sight on it because the rear sight kept walking out left and right after about 10,000 rounds. This thing got absolutely beat to shit. And this thing, believe it or not, still shoots really well. My neighbor apparently is shooting, as you can hear that. This one here has a Picatinny rail up top, and it has a CZ custom trigger in it, which feels really, really good. And then I have my classic lock grips. Long before lock grips knew who I was and sent me free grips, I bought these and I used them for several years. Back when I first started, you gotta warm up slow. You gotta start with your Glock and you gotta shoot with your Glock for a little while, and then you can do trees all summer and save up enough money and buy more guns. And in which case, this was the most expensive gun I purchased at the time. I think when I bought this, it was around $1,100, and I bought this on the recommendation of a USPSA masterclass shooter that I happened to meet at an FFL while I was picking up a different gun, and he told me all about USPSA, he told me about IDPA, and I had no idea Iowa even had handgun shooting sports. So when I went there, it was quite the experience. Very quickly, I learned to adapt, I learned to do quick reloads, I learned to shoot with these iron sights, and the rest, I suppose, is history. One funny thing that happened to me with this gun is the first match I ever went to, it was like 8 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. I was sort of hungover, I was tired, but I was really happy to be there. And the first shot I ever had to shoot in competition was a proving shot. A guy shot a popper at 35 yards and it didn't go down. And the next person then had to shoot it. And if it went down when I hit it, that means that it was calibrated correctly and he just didn't hit it well. But I was so damn nervous. I was in my early 20s and I'd never done anything like that before. And I remember just racking my hammer back and slowly squeezing the trigger, hovering that sight over that plate, and bam, that thing went down, and that guy gave me quite a damn frown. But I hit my target, and I was addicted ever since. Now, the Shadow SP01 is still a very viable competition gun to this day. It's almost exactly like a Shadow 2, it just doesn't have quite the undercut, quite the beaver tail, and the ergonomics of the lower are a bit different, but it takes about the same capacity, has about the same shootability, and the triggers are basically identical. They even swap parts in a lot of cases. So overall, if you can't afford a Shadow 2, I'm sure you can find one of these old girls somewhere for sale, or just a regular SP01, and you'd be extremely happy. It's a double single action steel frame gun, very light recoil, extremely accurate, and definitely reliable. Overall, I love that gun, as I love all of these guns, and for one reason or another, these things changed my life, and I hope you have guns out there that changed your life for the better as well. Maybe you have a gun that got you into pheasant hunting for the first time, maybe you have a gun that got you into long-range shooting, and if you did, leave that in the comment section below. I'd love to see it. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. Please help out your Oklahoma shelters, and remember to recycle. I'll check you later.